Assalamualaikum and very good day to everyone. My name is Nick Azro bin Abdullah. I'll be explaining on the inherent occupational health in fulfillment of the assignment 2 of inherent safety and health design. Basically, what I understand about inherent occupational health is it is inherent occupational health strives to eliminate or reduce the occupational health hazard by trying to eliminate the use of hazardous chemicals, process conditions, and operating procedures that may cause occupational hazards to the employees. There are twofold aims. Firstly, to reduce the risk of inherent properties of chemical, such as the toxicity and high vapor pressures, by using friendlier chemicals or the chemical in safer physical condition, such as in lower temperature, to eliminate the exposure. Secondly, to reduce such process steps or procedures which involve inherent danger of exposure of the chemical. Examples of such operation are some manual operation where the worker is in close contact with the material, such as the manual handling and dosing of chemical, emptying and cleaning of the equipment. The background of inherent occupational health is in inherent safety. Trevor Class originally presented the inherent safety principle in the early 1970s. He proposed that the concept applies also to environment and industrial hygiene in general level protection within the European industry. The term inherent health hazard was used but not formalized further. Inherent health aspect was considered by evaluating the effect of airborne chemicals to health. Inherent occupational health hazard were first formally discussed in detail by the paper of Hashim and Edward 2006. An inherent occupational health hazard can be defined here as a condition inherent to the operation or use of material in a particular occupation, industry, or work environment that can cause death, injury, acute or chronic illness, disability, or reduce job performance of personnel by an acute or chronic exposure. Basically, what I understand about inherent occupational health is the inherent occupational health index, whereby we are required to measure the index of the inherent occupational health. The health risk is defined as the probability that an individual exposed to a pollutant may experience an adverse health effect subsequent to the exposure. The potential for harm is a function of types and amounts of the chemicals present, duration and frequency of exposure, and condition in the working environment. Chemical exposure is assessed for processes under normal condition. Exposure caused by accidental emission, such as loss of containment, fire, or explosion, will not be included since they are covered by inherent safety. The IOHI, which are referring to inherent occupational health index for each process route, is calculated as a sum of the two factors as below equation. IO index for inherent occupational health equals to the index of physical and uh, process hazard index, and also the health and hazard index. We will first go to the physical and process hazards index. The index includes the factors that might give significant contributors to the arising of adverse health impacts. To quantify the hazard level, each factor is assigned with a number representing a penalty. The allocation of the penalties is based on the degree of potential hazards or the probability of exposure. A more meaningful factor will be given a larger penalty range and receive more significant weighting. The physical and process hazard index is calculated by summing up the penalty for all sub-indexes as the below equation. Okay, next, IHH, which are referring to health hazard index, describe the level of chemical hazard to human health upon exposure by two sub-indexes. The exposure limit-based sub-indexes, which is the IEL, gives information on the chronic hazard of the chemicals in the working air. Meanwhile, the R phase, on the other hand, describe the type of health effect that might be caused by the chemical itself. These indicators were selected for the purpose of identifying the intrinsic harmful potential of chemicals present in the process. Chemical with chronic toxicity effect have a higher range of penalty, which the maximum value of 5 in the R phase based subindex IR. The chronic toxicity was penalized by a more severe scale because of its more problematic nature. The IHH index is calculated as below equation, max IEL plus max IR. Okay, these are the reference that I use. Basically, I used to reference from this paper, Journal of Loss Prevention in the Process Industry by M.H. Hashim and M. Hearn. Okay, thank you. That is all for me.